3 errors, 11 runners left on base. The struggles continue for the Boston Red Sox as Tanner Houck makes his return to the rotation.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling Podcast, here to bring you the latest in Boston Red Sox Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget also, SiriusXM has you covered for the home broadcast of every Red Sox game. Just search Red Sox on the app and you can miss out on 0 pitches of Red Sox baseball. You definitely want to check that out. I highly invest. Although it may have been, in some people's terms, okay to miss Tuesday night's game in Houston, because what unfolded for the Red Sox was very much not great. Tanner Houck made his return to the rotation, so I'm going to be diving into that a little bit. Wilyer Abreu made his debut tonight, even though he wasn't supposed to play. I'm going to be talking about a little bit of that as well. And also, just once again, wondering what the Red Sox are doing, what goes on. So lots to talk about on today's show, but man, oh man, do the errors continue to just haunt this Red Sox team. You can't tell me that the Red Sox didn't have a chance in that game when it was 3-0. It feels like in this type of game, it's a huge milestone to accomplish, but they did score 3 runs late in the game thanks to a home run by Adam Duvall and a 2-run hit by Justin Turner in the 9th inning. So there was a chance, but the mistakes continue to pile up and haunt the Red Sox. The Astros won 7-3, but only 3 of those runs were earned runs. All the other runs they scored were on errors because the bottom of the 7th inning was an absolute mess. Just throwing errors all over the place from Abreu, from Llovera. The Llovera one was awful. Tucker grounded into a fielder's choice. Llovera should have been able to field that ball, throw it to second, and the Red Sox would have gotten an inning-ending double play to keep the game 3-0. But instead, he had to mess that up, and the inning continued, and it just continued to pile on with the mistakes. Urías made a really bad throw home on a fielder's choice. He was trying to have Connor Wong tag the runner, and the officiating crew didn't help the cause either, because the umpire originally called the runner out because he thought it was a force play and then realized there hadn't been a runner on every base because first base was empty. So he called him out and then realized he was safe because Connor Wong couldn't tag him because the throw was really bad. So he had to move all the way over to field it. So therefore he was unable to tag him. So not the best night overall for the officiating crew either. I mean, Alex Verdugo got ejected from the bench for arguing a call. From the bench. How did he even know it was Verdugo? It was wild. All of a sudden, there was just commotion, and the ump signaled to the Red Sox dugout and ejected somebody, and I saw Alex Cora still standing there, and I was like, well, what's going on here? Who got ejected? And then on the broadcast, OB said that it appears like Alex Verdugo is getting ejected. And I said, wow, that's a first, ejecting somebody off the bench when they're not even in the game. So that happened. And then later in the game, Alex Cora got ejected because he was also arguing a call. There was a called strike 3 to Justin Turner. It looked outside, but I think it barely hit the corner of the plate. So it was called a strike, but to the average eye, it didn't look like a strike. And then in the next inning, they called ball 4 to Alex Bregman, and that actually looked like a ball to me. and I think it was ball 4. But so Cora just had all this frustration built up, and he was going to argue the call against Turner. So then he got ejected. So 2 ejections in the game, and this frustration built up from Cora seems to be a result of how the series has gone in general and just how sloppy the Red Sox are playing. The officiating, it kind of goes back to Sunday's game against the Yankees when the umps were not the best in that game either, and there was controversy over some of the calls in that game as well. But his frustrations, obviously it's warranted being frustrated with the umps in this type of game because they really were just not good. But he should be taking some of that frustration out on his team for not being able to field the ball and play competent baseball. Devers had another error early on in the game that led to the Astros ultimately coming around and scoring a run. He's been a liability defensively. His defense improved at the beginning of the season, but then he dropped back into what he's been doing. Made a really bad throw to Tristan Casas at first base, and ultimately that's what the error was. Later on in this contract, I think Devers becomes a full-time DH. That's a conversation for another day, but his defense just has not been good. Speaking of defense, Trevor Story has actually been very good defensively. He made a couple nice plays again on Tuesday night. His arm is looking better than ever after getting surgery. He just really needs to get his bat going. I mean, my gosh, he is not seeing the ball well at all. So that needs to improve, but his defense has been good. But that bottom of the 7th inning on Tuesday just encapsulated all of the struggles the Red Sox have had all season long, with the mental mistakes, the defensive errors, and just giving extra outs to teams. I said this on yesterday's episode. You cannot give extra outs to a team like the Astros. You just can't do it. You have to play your best baseball when you are playing a team like Houston. It just has to happen. And the Red Sox are not doing that. And they are giving them extra outs and handing them runs, and then they end up in this type of situation. I said before this series started, they are in the most important 10-game stretch of the season right now. Most important 10-game stretch, and how they respond is they make all of these mistakes to cause Houston to score more runs and put their pitchers in bad spots. And not only that, but the other major issue that we've seen so far in this series is the lack of the Red Sox being able to deliver when they have scoring opportunities. They've stranded over 20 base runners in the first 2 games of this series. Over 20. That is so unacceptable. They had so many opportunities on Tuesday night where they had runners on and couldn't score a run. Had the bases loaded in 1 inning on Tuesday and couldn't score any runs. It's so pathetic. They could not get that big hit, and it almost felt like they were so close to keeping themselves in the first 2 games of this series, but instead they failed to deliver and failed to come through until it was too late. And of course, Turner, God bless him, I love Turner, comes through in the 9th inning for the Red Sox on Tuesday, but they still were down 4 runs because of all these mistakes they were making that were piling up and haunting them. Justin Verlander, I give the guy a ton of credit for being 40 years old and still being able to pitch the way that he is. Awesome. But this is more about the Red Sox failing to come through when they need to. Urías had a piss poor at bat in, the situation where the bases were loaded. I mean, Mr. Grand Slam, as we like to call him, just decides to swing at the first pitch for a weak pop-up with the bases loaded. Take a pitch, dude. My gosh. I mean, what are we doing here? This team is just so off and on. And I was hoping that momentum after the Yankees series would carry over into Houston, but it didn't. Couldn't score runs, made too many defensive errors, and that ultimately is what did them in for the 2nd night in a row. And I'm starting to just lose words for it. I mean, play competent baseball. That's not Cora's fault. That's not Bloom's fault. They have to be able to make these plays. They are professional baseball players for a reason. They should be able to field the baseball and make the appropriate play at the right time. And a team like the Astros will take advantage of you if you don't. And that's exactly what they did. Simple as that. Now, the best the Red Sox can hope for is a split. Fantastic. And with the way they're playing, that's not going to happen. They need to play polished baseball. It's been a problem all season long. I don't know why it hasn't been fixed, but they need to fix it right now. Oh, coming up, I'm going to be talking about Tanner Houck. He returned to the Red Sox rotation on Tuesday night. So could be good news or bad news moving forward, but I'm going to analyze it all coming up next. If you're ever in need of car parts, eBay Motors is fantastic. They are the way to go. They will hook you up with the best vehicle parts that you need, so you'll never have to stress about getting the right parts. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Car parts are so important. You need to make sure that your car drives the right way because it can be really scary if not. So eBay Motors will absolutely hook you up with what you need. And I promise you, they are the absolute best. So I highly encourage you to check them out. Tanner Houck returned to the Red Sox rotation on Tuesday night, and overall, he was not bad. Keep in mind that he was facing an Astros lineup that was lethal. I said on yesterday's episode, it's pretty bold of him to return to the lineup against a team that is just so good offensively. And they just have been for years now, which is why they've been to the World Series so often lately. So Tanner Houck, it really shows his mental toughness, being willing to come back during a series like this. But he did it, and he looked okay overall. You can't really complain too much about it. He went 5 innings, gave up 3 earned runs, and recorded 3 walks with 2 Ks. I mean, his defense made the outing look a lot better than it was. Honestly, he overall looked fine to me. He looked confident out there for the most part. His velocity was there. He was looking back almost to his normal self. But unfortunately, there were a couple poor plays around him defensively that made it a harder time for him to really be able to get going. I'm glad they were able to stretch him and get 5 innings out of him in his first start back, but I'm looking at it for him as the type of situation where there was a huge possibility he could have gotten absolutely rocked in this game, and that just wasn't the case, which I'm really thankful for and happy about, because there could have been a serious problem if he just didn't look good. The fan base would have gone absolutely ballistic and said, Tanner Houck is not good anymore. Kyle Tucker is just a dangerous hitter. He smacked a 2-run homer in the bottom of the first inning. Not much you can really do about that. I mean, it was tough because Alex Bregman prior to that hit a really, really hard ball to Devers. And people were trying to blame Devers, saying, it's his fault that Bregman reached first base on it, but there wasn't anything Devers could really do there. He tried to make a play, but it was going to be a hit regardless. I mean, that ball was hit really hard, so that one wasn't on Devers, and Bregman is just such a good hitter. So ultimately that then got Tucker up and he hit a home run. But then later on in that same inning, Devers actually did make an error, a throwing error. He fielded the ball, tried to throw it to Casas, and Casas couldn't get it and tag first base because the ball was just way out of his reach. So again, this goes back to Devers being a liability defensively. He just has not been able to consistently figure it out. And infield defense is so incredibly important, which is why I was so excited for Story to come back, because I know his defense is good. And the infield for the Red Sox this year has certainly missed that type of defense filling in there. But there wasn't really a huge concern for Tanner Houck. I suspect that things will only go up for him from here. Getting his feet wet coming into tonight's game was a good thing for him. And again, like I said, he did walk a few guys, but other than that, that'll come with time. I mean, he needs to regain the control that he had, and he has to kind of get back on track from that standpoint. But overall, from the standpoint of, did he come out and do his job? Yes, he did. Primarily, there wasn't a whole lot more you really could have asked for from him. And I hope that he can continue to develop that longevity and just pitch deeper into games. Again, I wasn't expecting him to pitch deep into the game tonight, because if a player's just coming back from an injury, you don't want them to push themselves too hard. So I was totally fine with the 5 innings that he gave on Tuesday. But I'm hoping as time goes on, he continues to develop more confidence, because we're going to need him to pitch deep into games as a longer-term starter. It's a really good thing that he's back in the rotation now, because the bullpen can really go back to resuming their regular full-time roles of being in the bullpen instead of having to play around with too many relievers starting games. So this has been a long process and long wait of getting ready for Houck to come back. But he overall did not look bad at all. It was by no means perfect, the start, but he was getting the job done, and he was fooling those Astros hitters. He was figuring things out, and that's all we can really ask for from him. Prior to going on the IL, he wasn't pitching that great. He had a couple starts in there prior to the game that sent him to the IL, in which he just did not really look good. So for him to be able to come back and challenge himself right off the bat could be a good thing for him, because, you know, the Astros lineup is just so tough. Not every lineup has the makeup that the Astros have. So by him starting against a very competitive lineup, hopefully next time that pressure is a little bit less, and he'll, you know, not have to feel as much like he's pushing himself. The Astros do come to Fenway next week, so there's a possibility that he'll have to pitch again in that series. But hopefully he, by then, you know, feels a little bit more comfortable with being back up in the majors. So I don't have a huge problem with Houck's start overall. It's too bad that errors cost him a little bit, but ultimately, you know, Kyle Tucker crushed that ball, so there was nothing he really could have done about that. So it was fun having him back. It was nice to see him back out there on the mound, because it feels like the Astros are just a tough team to beat regardless, and their offense is just going to bully any pitcher. So Houck really did the best he could, and I'm happy with what I saw from him. Coming up, I'm going to be talking about Wilyer Abreu, who made his debut on Tuesday with the Red Sox for a couple different reasons. So going to be touching on all of that. But first, just wanted to remind you that SiriusXM has you covered for the home broadcast of every Red Sox game. Just search SiriusXM in the App Store and type in Red Sox, and you will not miss a single pitch. The NESN broadcast will be there, and we'll have you covered. If you're driving, it's a great way to pass time. I remember I used to do a lot of driving when I was commuting 45 minutes to an hour to work, and so I couldn't watch the games, but listening to the games really helped pass a lot of time in the car and still makes you feel like you're in on the action. So the SiriusXM has you covered with all of that. Just search Red Sox. Don't forget also to follow me on Twitter at GabbyHurlbut10 and follow the show on Twitter at LO_Red Sox. Continue the conversation that way. Please share the show with your friends and family. Continue to subscribe and download. And I know that the Red Sox are in a tough stretch right now, but there are positive things that we can take away as we move into the last stretch of the season. So give me a follow, give the show a follow, and we can make sense of it all together. But speaking of positive things to take away from the Red Sox right now, Wilyer Abreu entered the chat on Tuesday night. So Jarren Duran was injured. He injured his toe in the game against the Yankees on Sunday, climbing up the wall to try to make a catch. Unfortunately, he received an MRI. On Tuesday, the results came back with not the best news, but also not the most concerning news. Essentially, he was placed on the 10-day injured list, but the Red Sox don't suspect that it'll be a crazy long stay. They don't know for sure yet when he's going to be coming back, but he was placed on the IL. So Wilyer Abreu was activated from AAA. In case you don't know, Wilyer Abreu was one of the players acquired in the Christian Vázquez trade last year when they traded Christian Vázquez to, ironically, Houston. Abreu was one of those players that came back in return. So it's pretty ironic that he made his debut against the Astros, but he wasn't supposed to be in the lineup originally on a Tuesday night. The Red Sox were planning on having him start Wednesday in the lineup, but circumstances didn't allow that to happen. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Alex Verdugo got himself ejected from the bench early in the game for chirping and getting angry with the umpire. So therefore, Abreu had to take his spot in right field. Had a pretty bad throw during that mess of a seventh inning where everybody was just not doing anything right for the Red Sox. But he did record 2 hits. He smashed a double out to the wall, and then he recorded a single too. So I was pleased with what I saw from him at the plate. Obviously, it's his first game, so I'm curious to see him play at Fenway. I think his bat could be great for Fenway. But it was definitely a promising sign for him. And the reason I bring this up is because even though the Red Sox are not playing good baseball as of the last couple nights, and they've just been so inconsistent all season, that's just who they are. The future still looks pretty good. If Abreu can figure it out and get acclimated quickly towards being in the majors, he could be a key piece moving forward for the Red Sox to utilize later on as part of the future. So try to think about, as frustrated as you are about the Red Sox loss, try to think about the fact that he looked pretty good at the plate and was able to put together 2 hits in his MLB debut against his former club. That's not an easy thing to do. And you could even see his family in the stands getting really elated. How cool of a moment is that, by the way? Getting to come and watch, your family member make their major league debut and see him record a couple hits along the way. That's got to be so rewarding for them. Just a cool moment all around for the Abreu family. This has been much anticipated. Like I said on yesterday's show, he had a good season in AAA, so I'm happy he was able to get the call up and try to showcase his talent really at the major league level. So we can take light in the fact that the Red Sox future still remains to look pretty good. Obviously, Duran being out is unfortunate, just as the Red Sox are finally feeling like they're a healthy baseball team. This happens and Duran goes down. So not ideal. He's just been such a key piece to the Red Sox this season, and they really do need the kid. But ultimately, if Abreu can be a really good placeholder until Duran comes back, I'm not complaining. Duran will come back at some point, and it's better to nip this injury in the butt than have him play. So we'll see what Abreu can do, but he definitely was hitting for a lot of power at the AAA level. And he's able to get on base and find ways to make things happen. So he's definitely a player with what I believe is a high ceiling in terms of potential. So hopefully he can come, and nobody's expecting or asking him to contribute in the same way that Duran did. But if he can be a decent outfielder that this team can utilize later on, that's fantastic, and I'm all for that. So go Abreu, definitely a highlight type of night for him. He can remember his major league debut by recording a couple hits in the game. Unfortunately, the Red Sox as a team cannot be excited about the result of Tuesday's game, but just got to move on and hope for a split in this series. I honestly would see a split as a miracle at this point with the way that they've looked in the series so far, but something needs to be done here because these are winnable games and they have opportunities. They just continue to nip themselves in the butt. Figure it out. I mean, Abreu's riding this high because of his game that he had. Let him have a reason to continue to ride that high, please. Don't give him reasons to be disappointed after the game that he had. He needs to gain up confidence, and the team needs to help him with that confidence by playing good baseball. So keep the faith. Go Red Sox. Let's just hope for better baseball tonight, and I'll see you on the flip side.